guys, well, we are going to get started with our sewing unit. And before we actually get on the sewing machines, I kind of want to talk about the arrangement of the classroom. So the tables that you sit at daily for your other lessons, these are still going to be where you sit. Only what the idea is that it's going to be the spot where you do all of your prep work. So you might have your Chromebook out and open, watching the videos of what you're supposed to be doing for that lesson. You might have your fabric or whatever you're working on, your seam gauge. You might have your marking pen, your pin cushion, and any other supplies that you have out. You'll just keep working at your station. So you might sit here and do some pinning or measuring. And then when you're ready to actually start sewing, that is when you head over to the sewing machine. So the idea is that you do most of your prep work over here at your table or over at the iron. And then when you're actually ready to sew, that is when you actually get onto your sewing machine, rather than sitting over at the sewing machine the entire time. So let's head on over to the sewing machines now and take a little tour through all the sewing machine parts. See how each part works and what their jobs are. All right, guys, so as you get going with the lesson today, you're going to have the flashcard that you're going to be filling in, and just make sure that you're interacting with the machine. What I mean by that is, if I am turning the hand wheel, then you are practicing turning the hand wheel. If I'm raising and lowering the presser foot, you are too. So like, you're figuring out how to actually operate the machine by interacting with it. That does not mean that you are excessively turning knobs or hitting buttons and flipping the machine off and on, anything like that. It just means that you are practicing what it would feel like to reach in the machine and raise and lower the foot, and to operate the machine just like you would on a daily basis. So you're gonna be interacting with and practicing each of these steps as you see them happen in the video. Your sewing machine is numbered, and your number of your tray that you were assigned for class corresponds with your sewing machine number. So you'll just want to make sure that you're always using your sewing machine and not using someone else's unless you are told to do that. And the reason is maybe one day you accidentally leave your spool of thread and your bobbin inside your machine, and if I know that someone has left one in machine 12, which is the one we're looking at, then I can go back and figure out there's only 4 other people who are using that same sewing machine. So that allows us to figure out whose that thread belongs to. So just kind of helps with that. And also with machine maintenance, it's really just best for me if you use your regular sewing machine, the one that is assigned to you, and not just picking and choosing, okay? So when you go over to your machine each day, what you should see is a rolly chair or stool sitting at your spot. If you don't have one, we do have extra rolly chairs in the interior design room, or some along the back wall with our industrial machines, but you need to have a chair. And then underneath your counter, you'll see that you should have a foot pedal. So when getting everything prepped and ready for the day, you should have your foot pedal with the narrower part facing forward and the thicker part towards the back. So this is gonna sit right in front of your right foot when you sit down to sew. So you just wanna make sure that you have everything kind of prepped and ready before you actually get seated. So I'm gonna go ahead and sit down as if I am ready to get started for the day. Let's see here, there we go. So I'm just gonna tuck in, and I'm gonna make sure that that foot pedal is right in front of my right foot, just like this. And my sewing machine is centered right in front of me. Notice how I don't have my machine way back here, and I also don't have it close to the edge. We want about a hand's distance between the countertop and where the sewing machine starts. So this is a good distance. Over on the side, you have the plug for the foot pedal, the plug for the outlet, and then this is the on-off switch. So when you are getting ready to turn your machine on, you always want to make sure that these are plugged in really nice and tightly. And to power on your machine, you flip it from the O to the vertical line. So I'm pushing the vertical lines going up and down. I push that back, and now my machine is turned on. I have light up here lighting up my monitor, and then I also have a light under the machine that indicates that the machine is turned on. To turn it off, we just flip it back to the side with the O. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the machine on again, and I'm gonna go through the number diagram. Number 1, hand wheel. The hand wheel is over on the right side of the machine. It's right here. and you will use the hand wheel when you want to raise and lower the needle manually. I'm gonna grab a hold of the hand wheel and I'm going to always turn it toward me. So I turn it and it goes toward me. I always kind of look at my thumb and my hand and how it rotates. It's going in this direction, so my thumb is gonna come toward me. Turn the hand wheel towards you, and as you do, your needle on the sewing machine is going to be moving up and down. Number 2 is the stitch selector. The stitch selector is the large dial on the front of the machine right here. When you turn your machine on, it automatically is on a stitch 1, which is just a straight stitch. But depending on the directions, you may be asked to turn your stitch selector in order to select one of the other 50 stitches. To do that, you just take the dial and you turn it in either direction. If I turn it to the left, it's going to go back to 50, and it would count back from 50 to 49 if I continue to turn it left. If I start back at 1, let's say I need to get to a zigzag, which is a stitch 5. That's a pretty common stitch. I turn to the right and it gets me to stitch number 5. Now, what does the stitch selector actually do? It changes the direction of the needle. So when we are on a stitch 1, the needle is just going to go straight. It's always going to stay in a straight line, and it's going to go up and down and up and down. When I turn it to a 5, to create that zigzag, the needle is going to go right, left, right, left, right, left. So it is very important to read the directions on a project to determine which stitch you're supposed to have it turn to. Go ahead and look at the stitch length and stitch width now. I'm going to go ahead and turn my machine back to a 1. And if I am looking at the stitch length, that is how long a stitch is going to be, whether it is like an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch long. So it is the length of it, and it shows you right here those stitch lengths. To increase my stitch length, on the top button, I hit the plus, and it just increases up to 5. A 5 is what is considered a basting stitch. It's really long and it's meant to be temporary. If I need to reduce my stitch length and make it smaller, I hit the minus, 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 minus until I have the size that I want. 2.5 is a standard stitch length. Number 4 on your card is stitch width. Stitch width is this button down here. And there's a diagram showing you what it would look like with a zigzag. A smaller stitch width will give you a small width of your zigzag, and the wider that you do it, the larger your zigzag would get. So stitch length and stitch width. If you are doing stitches 1 and 2, you really do only work with the stitch length because you're not making the stitch any wider at all because it's just going in a straight line. You would, however, use the stitch width, this one down here, if you're doing stitches 4, 5, and 6. Number 5 is the bobbin winder. The bobbin winder is only used when you're winding the bobbin. This is not a feature you will have to use every time you sew, but when you have an empty bobbin, this is the bobbin, when you have an empty one and you need to refill it, you will use this bobbin winder to do that. I will show you in a future lesson exactly how to wind it, but the bobbin sits on the bobbin winder and you have to push it from its starting position over to the right to engage it. When you're done winding your bobbin, you pull it back to the left to disengage it. What that means is I'm going to do a little demo of the needle. So I'm going to lower my presser foot. I'll teach you how to do it later, but I lower my presser foot and I put my foot down on the foot pedal. If you'll notice, the needle goes up and down, up and down. However, if I take my bobbin winder and push it into the engaged position over in the right, and now I put my foot on the foot pedal, the bobbin winder starts to spin, but the needle does not move up and down. I tell you this because sometimes you will come in and your machine, you might feel like it's not working because your needle doesn't move up and down. What you then need to make sure is that the bobbin winder is disengaged. It needs to be over to the far left position. Number 6 is the spool pin. The spool pin is located on the top of the sewing machine by the handle, right here. This is where your spool of thread will sit. And again, in the threading videos, I'll show you how to do that. When we get into the specific threading videos, you will see more clear instructions about these thread guides. But number 7 on your card is thread guides. There are several of them on your machine, and they are extremely important when threading your machine correctly. So right here, this metal hook is a thread guide. Back here, this was number 1. Back here is a little plastic ridge. That is thread guide number 2. Probably the most important of all of the thread guides is number 8. It is the thread take-up lever. Right now on this machine, we can't really see it, and the reason we can't see it is because the needle is down. So one thing I want you to get in a habit of always is always making sure that you end your seams with your needle in the highest position. The easiest way to do that is to always end by pressing your needle up and down button. When you do that, this silver piece inside of the 4 thread guide came up to the top. That silver piece is the thread take-up lever. And when it is in the highest position, it releases the tension on the thread. So when I raise my presser foot, pull my thread out, it releases it. If I miss the thread take-up lever, or if I try to move my thread and the thread take-up lever is down a little bit, it does not release the thread like it should. So that part is extremely important. Item number 9 is the tension control. Yours should always be on a 4 unless you're working on an advanced project that has you change the tension. For general, everyday use on these machines, it will always stay on a 4. Number 10 is my absolute favorite feature of these newer sewing machines. It is the up-down needle button. To use it, you just hit it with your finger. What it does is it lowers and it raises the needle. As I showed you in the previous step, that is really important in making sure that your thread take-up lever is in the correct position. This makes it easy for you because if you end your seam by using the needle up button, you always end up with that thread take-up lever where it needs to be. Number 11 is the reverse button. It looks like a little U-turn, and we use that when we are finishing a seam. It's used to reinforce the end, almost like tying a knot. To use it, you either hold it down with your finger, or if you want to go a little bit more quickly, you have your foot on the foot pedal while you hold your finger down on the reverse button. You can do one reverse stitch at a time by pushing the button, letting go, pushing it again, and then it will do one reverse at a time. Usually we will do 3 at a time. Number 12 is your needle. Your needle is right after number 6 thread guide, and this is different from a hand sewing needle. A machine needle, it has the top, and the eye of the needle is at the base of it, or the point of it. Whereas a hand sewing needle would have the eye at the top and the point at the opposite end. Number 13 is the presser foot. The presser foot is right in here. It is just underneath the needle, and its job is to hold the fabric in place while the fabric is being pulled through the machine by another part coming up called the feed dogs. So the presser foot holds the fabric in place. It presses it down. There are many types of presser feet. The one you're looking at is the most common one that we will be using. It has the name J. It is a J foot, and we can see that on the foot. It has that J carved out. You will know which foot to use by looking at the monitor and whichever stitch you have selected. So I'm on stitch 1. It tells me to use the J foot. If I turn the dial to a 7, that stitch wants me to change out my foot and put on a G foot. If I am installing a zipper, I will install a different foot. It is called a zipper foot. There are lots of different types of feet. The zipper foot right here and the regular foot that we just have on there, the J foot, those are the two most common ones that you will use. Item number 14, presser foot lifter. The presser foot lifter raises and lowers the presser foot. In most cases, the presser foot will be lowered during sewing and raised when you're finished. So right now the presser foot is down, and if I want to raise it, I reach in. This is it. It's this gray lever. I just pull it up, and that raises up the presser foot. When I am ready to sew, I have my fabric in place and ready to start sewing, I will lower the presser foot. You'll do this a lot, raise and lower, raise and lower. I want to show you one little quick tip. So if you begin sewing, or you think you're ready to sew, and you put your foot on the foot pedal, which I'm gonna do here, and it beeps at me, and it gives me that error message on my screen, you might think you've done something really wrong, but really all you need to do is lower your presser foot. Your machine does not want to sew unless that presser foot is down. Now that the presser foot is down, if I put my foot down on the foot pedal, it starts to sew. Okay, so again, if I have my presser foot up and I start to sew, error message, so lower that presser foot and proceed. Number 15 is the throat plate. It is the silver area on the machine. It's metal and it contains measurements that are 1/8 of an inch spaced apart. And you use those increments to know how to line your fabric up when you are given seam widths. Number 16 are your feed dogs. They are right underneath the presser foot, and if you feel your finger across them, they feel jagged. I call them little teeth. The feed dogs are what feeds the fabric through the machine. So it is going to be used with that presser foot. The presser foot holds the fabric down against the feed dogs, and as the feed dogs move, they rotate the fabric towards the back of the machine. Number 17 is the bobbin case. The bobbin case has a little switch right here to access it. So we're gonna pull that little switch over, release the bobbin cover, and the bobbin case is down here. This is what will hold our bobbin when we are sewing. There's a thread guide down here that you will learn when you learn how to thread your machine. The other part of 17 is that bobbin cover. It covers up the bobbin case. And again, you slide that little dial over to remove the bobbin cover. There is one part of it that has a little point. That point is going to fit underneath that little metal piece. So it's going to fit under that, and then it just pushes down to lock in place. Item 18 is the bobbin thread cutter. So when we thread the bobbin or put the bobbin into the bobbin case down here, we will go through a very specific thread guide path in order to have it in the appropriate spot. This right here leads us to a little blade. That is number 18, the bobbin thread cutter, right inside of that path. Number 19 is the speed control. You have 3 main speeds, 1, 2, and 3, and it just keeps getting faster as you get to 3. Typically, when you're starting out in sewing and learning, you'll start at a 1, and then as you begin to feel comfortable, you will increase your speed. A couple of additional features that are not on your card. First of all, you have a drawer right here that if this was your at-home machine, you could store things in. So I just grab a hold of it with my thumb and kind of pull down, and there is a little storage area down here. In class, I would like you to leave that empty. Do not put things in there because it kind of junks up the machines for the other kids who are using them. The other thing that this drawer is it can be released, and then you can have an arm if you're sewing things that are circular. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hand on that drawer and I'm going to pull it off to the left side. So as I kind of pull it towards the left, it comes off. So it's just a completely separate piece. And we use that if we have something circular that we need to wrap around in order to get up underneath that presser foot. To put that back on, we are going to just line it up. There's like a little path that it slides across, and you push it back in place. The thread cutter is on the side of your machine here, and it is used when you are finishing the end of a seam. So you have finished and you've pulled out your thread, your bobbin thread. You have 2 strings almost always, and you will run them across that blade and it will cut them apart. I'm not exactly sure why this happens, but one complaint I have about this machine is that this double needle button gets hit sometimes on accident and you don't realize you do it. On your screen, what will happen is it will show the picture of 2 needles side by side. And when you try to do anything with your stitch selector, it will give you this error code E8. So a lot of times kids have no idea what to do to fix that. I want you to remember this and look at those 2 needles on the screen and remind yourself, oh yeah, all I need to do to fix that is I need to hit this button until only 1 needle shows up. So now I've got 1 needle on my screen and I should be good to go. I can turn the stitch selector again. When you are finished for the day, I want you to make sure that your presser foot is in the down position, your needle is down, and your machine is turned off. So the lights go off. All right, so you have had a chance to get to know all the different parts of the sewing machine and you're finished for the day. So we have powered our machine off. Now on a normal day, the other thing that you would want to make sure that you do is that you take the thread out of your sewing machine. You'll see how to do this on a future day, but it's really important that we take our thread and our bobbin and you'll put it back in your sewing kit. The other thing you're going to do is just kind of look around you. Do you have any threads? If so, sweep them off into your hand so you can go put them in the trash. We do not want to use the front of the machine as a trash can. That is a no-no, so you want to keep that nice and clean. Look on the floor and see, are there any threads that you need to pick up and throw in the trash? I do have a handheld vac that we can use if you do need to use that. So you want to just take a minute to get everything cleaned up. Replace that foot pedal, so make sure it's right back where it needs to be, right in front of the workstation right here, just like it was when you first set things up. And you'll push your chair all the way in. And then the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna head back over to your regular spot. You will pick up all of your supplies and do a quick inventory for yourself that makes sure you have not misplaced your sewing shears or your seam gauge or any of your notions that you have in your bag. And then you'll go put your bag and any of your other supplies back in your tray. We'll talk about procedures for turning stuff in and what to do when you are finished, and some other lessons. But the main thing that you want to do is not leave any of your supplies sitting behind at your sewing machine area. Make sure it all ends up back over at your regular assigned seat, back in your sewing kit, back in your tray.